Nancy, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. You have so many years of experience in pharmacoepidemiology and real-world evidence, and I know that you've worked across areas that range as wide as COVID research to working with the National Football League and Major League Baseball, as well as experience in the US with EMA and China. If you were to sum up where you think the field of real world evidence is today, what do you think are the top issues that we as researchers should be or are grappling with?
Well, just to set the record straight, was the National Basketball Association. Haven't cracked with Major League Baseball yet, but thank you for the lovely introduction, Patty. You know, the thing that's top of mind for every researcher who wants to use real world evidence or who wants to, or a biopharmaceutical company or medical device manufacturer who wants to submit real world data for regulator decision making or for payers, everybody wants to know, how can you trust the quality of the data? So that's where we start. I think the three things you need to remember are transparency, provenance, and curation. So transparency, everybody needs to see, will want to see what you've done. You can't hide what you're doing. You don't have to name, for example, if you're using insurance claims, you don't have to say, I got them from the ABC insurer, but you have to talk about the regionality or something. So the provenance of the data is a term that's come into recent use. Mm-hmm. And it really talks about the history of those data, where they came from, why they were created. For example, I remember trying to once study psychiatric events and health insurance claims. And that's where I got my first lesson about mental health carve-outs. They're often provided by a different insurer. So if I use the main insurance data, I won't see a single psychiatric event, not because it didn't happen, but because it wasn't covered. So understanding why somebody is in a database, how long they're in the database, what events you like to see, those are all things we talk about in provenance. And then curation is very important. That's how you check the data, how you edit it, how you create new variables. What do you do to make sure that what you asked for is exactly what you got? A huge important step. It's really easy to make small mistakes in transferring large data, which introduces a systematic error. So now we've talked about provenance, curation, transparency, but the biggest issue, I think, is relevance. And that's where you need to start. Sometimes we find data that's highly relevant, but imperfect. It's small, or tech oncology. We'd love to know progression-free survival time after a treatment, but in the real-world setting, we don't do biopsies just for the heck of it, so we'll understand the progression. But we who use existing data to study the equivalent of progression-free survival, we look at time to treatment change. Mm-hmm. The thinking is that you don't change your treatment if you're doing well. So is time to treatment change less desirable and more imperfect? Yes. Is it better than nothing? Heck yes. We have a way to start to estimate and to start to put boundaries on safety and effectiveness.
That's so well summarized in terms of the major issues. I'm going to drill just a little bit further down into data provenance, given the fact that it's so much in our foresight right now. Do researchers understand how to describe and evaluate and define data provenance, or is that still being discovered?
That's an interesting question, Patty. What I've heard from customers and from biopharmaceutical companies is that their submissions, when they use real world data, they can describe the provenance of their data in anywhere from a paragraph or two. To one company I heard of, that their provenance description went 50 pages. Mm-hmm. So it depends a lot on whether the database has had publications or not, but there is no prescriptive guidance. And I think we need to rely on common sense. What a skeptic would require. And I always think about replicability or the ability to replicate a study in another population using either the same methods in another population or different methods in the same population. People need to know what you did and who you did it on, and then we can see if that's some quirk of that covered population or it's really a biological fact you'll see over and over again.
Mhm. When you're submitting manuscripts to journals, are you doing something different in terms of what you're providing to enable replicability?
Like, that gets back, yes and no. It gets back to the transparency.
Mhm.
It's always the same trade-off in describing the provenance goes with describing exactly how you've handled the data, how you've analyzed it and the like. Most people don't put out their statistical programs. Despite various journal policies that have come and gone over time, most people don't make their data available because they haven't finished analyzing it or there's more to know or it's not theirs to share for a
Mhm.
variety of good reasons. So we get more questions, but we get most of the questions we get are about generalizability and representativeness, not about what you did and how you did it.